What's the sweetest thing a kid has said to you? Your life will be spared. And then walked away. Nothing ominous about that. The dad then explained that this was basically her way of saying, I'm upset, but not at you. Apparently she was having a bad day. I worked with kids with Asperger's a while back, and this one kid, Peter, came running to me so excited, and he says, guess what I have in my pockets? So I ask what, and he goes, nothing. And I'm like, I guess that's neat. And he goes, you don't understand. Think of all the things I can put in them. Taught me a real life lesson there. Thanks, Peter. Recently, a kindergartner could not pronounce my name and called me Miss Cool. So if you ask me, I'm just gonna go legally change my name to that. Bye. LOL. I love kindergartners. I miss being that age myself. Before COVID in 2020 fucked up my life, back in January, we had a field trip to the zoo with all the juniors at my high school and elementary schoolers from the nearby elementary school. I was a buddy to a kindergartner and a third grader from there. And on our way back, we stopped at the elementary school. The teachers who was chaperoning gave us 15 minutes for the little kids to show us their classroom and the school and such. They showed me their classroom. Oh, the nostalgia hit hard. And with 5 minutes left or so, we went to the basketball court outside. I practice half-court shots all the time, and I'm pretty good at them. So after we were done there, I told them, watch this, and shot a couple that went off the rim. Then I shot one that swished. They were like, wow! And the kindergartner said, half-court Superman! Nobody besides them saw it, but it was pretty funny. I miss the pre-COVID days. It was an indirect comment. My teenage son had a friend over, and my husband and I were having a dance party for two. The boys came upstairs, and I tried to invite them in. Of course, my son wanted nothing to do with it, but his friend, whom I know well, jumped right in. I later heard him tell my son that he wished his parents loved each other like his parents do. Happy but sad in this situation. Back in college, my figure drawing class went to the seniors' home next to campus to practice drawing pictures of older people. A woman asked me to draw her 4-year-old visiting granddaughter. I was happy to. I drew the picture and gave it to them. They left. Grandma was huffy and rude the whole time, but the girl was very sweet. Thought that was that. But then, about 15 minutes later, the girl darted back into the room, alone, and gave me 2 crumbled dollar bills. I wanted to give you my soda money, since you drew such a pretty picture of me. And then she darted back out before I could respond. Best $2 I've ever made as an artist. My husband's ex-wife hasn't been in the picture with the kids since she remarried the man she was cheating on him with, right after the divorce. The youngest wasn't even a year when she split, and hadn't really seen any of them since. He had primary custody already, but she gave up all rights when we decided to get married because she wanted to be free of the burden, and figured then I could deal with them since I wanted to marry him. They're 3 super sweet girls, and I was pissed. How she more or less just threw them away. The youngest was 5 at the time this happened, and me and her teenage sister were talking about it when she hit me with this. I'm glad you're gonna be my only mama. She wasn't my mama, not like you. Then her eyes got really big and scared, and she said in the tiniest voice, are you happy you're gonna be my mama? I assured her I was very happy to be her mama, and might have cried later on about it. I was wearing shorts and my niece looked at my stretch marks. I'm very insecure about them, and asked what they were, so I told her, and she said, oh, I think they look really cool. They look like lightning bolts. Ever since then, I've referred to my stretch marks as lightning bolts. That just triggered a memory of my late father, and now I am laughing. My dad had his leg amputated, and we were at an outpatient clinic at the hospital. This cute little girl came skipping along and had the saddest look in her eye, and said, oh my god, where's your leg? The mother looked so horrified, and my dad and I just burst out laughing. Little background info to clarify, what is the sweetest thing? Just got out of jail after 145 days, for a third-time possession charge, my best friend picked me up from jail and brought me to his house for a place to stay since I lost my apartment. His son is 9 and wanted to hear a story, so I told him the story of Arthas Menethil from World of Warcraft because I know it from the heart. I had to act dramatic while telling it. He told me, "I wish you could tell me stories like that every day." I don't know why, but that little comment to me was the best and sweetest thing I've heard in so long. My mom fell a month or so ago and broke her leg. Her surgery shortly after has been healing nicely. Monday night, she was rushed to the ER for chest pain. Initially, they thought it was a heart attack. Turned out to be a pulmonary embolism. She was in pain, but only had to stay the night. My dad was pretty shaken, but he told me to head home as there wasn't much I could do for her. I came home and my 4-year-old ran up to me and gave me the biggest hug. He sees that I have been crying and the following conversation ensues. Son: Daddy, what's wrong? Me: Son, Nana is in the hospital. She is okay, but she might have to stay there for a day or so. At this point, I start crying again. Son: Daddy, don't cry. Be brave. Take deep breaths. I will get you a tissue. He runs to the desk and grabs a tissue for me. He then runs to the couch. Son: Come sit with me, Daddy. We can snuggle. He is turning out to be the sweetest little boy on the planet. My wife and I both shared a glance for a few moments and silently nodded to one another. Sweetest thing to ever come out of his mouth. When my son was about 2, he and my wife were singing The Wheels on the bus. They were sitting in the other room, going through all the verses. The driver on the bus, the babies on the bus, etc. With my wife singing the lyrics and my son providing the appropriate response for what the various things and people do and or say. They get to what is typically the last verse, the mommy is on the bus, say shh shh shh. But instead of ending the song, my wife adds a verse. From the other room, I hear, my wife, the daddy's on the bus, say, my son, I love you. Still makes me tear up thinking about it. I coach soccer at my kid's elementary school. The 6-year-old little sister of 2 boys that I had coached for the last few years signed up to play. I started a program where if the players read or were to read a certain amount of minutes, they would earn their name on the back of their jersey. This is a Title I school with 75% of the population on free lunch, so having your name on the back of your jersey was a big deal. I had coached for 5 years previously, and we never had the money to offer this to kids. Each time a kid would achieve the goal, I would ask what number and what name, first or last. Me: Hey, kid's name, what number would you like on the back of your new jersey? Sweet 6-year-old girl: 10. Me: Oh, you want to have the same number as Messi and Neymar? I think we can make that happen. Sweet 6-year-old girl: No, I want to have the same number as you. I then realized the coach jersey I was wearing, given to me by the parents as a gift in the first year, had the number 10 on the back. I was speechless for a good minute. Here, this can be your tip. Needs context though. I was delivering pizza to his house in late April, many years ago. His mom apologized for not having enough money to give me a tip. I told her it was no big deal. The kid ran off for about a minute as I exchanged the pizza for a check, and he returned with a little bag of Easter candy, which he gave to me. I have fairly terrible self-esteem surrounding my physical appearance. Walked out of a bathroom stall and a little girl, maybe 4 or 5, was next to me when washing our hands. She stared at me the whole time, and I'm thinking, this kid is staring at me because I look gross. Kids can't help it, etc. And then she suddenly said, "You're pretty." I swear it caught me off guard, so I didn't respond, so she repeated it. My heart was set to burst. I work with kids at an acting camp. It wasn't so much what one said, but what one did. I had worked there for a few years, and on the day of our show, I said that they were my favorite group, and I had the pleasure of working with. My favorite kid, he must have been 10 at the time, ran up to me and hugged me. Many years ago, I passed a father and 5-year-old son in a hospital corridor. I smiled at them. They both smiled back. As they walked away, I heard the dad say, "That lady sure had a pretty smile, didn't she?" "Sure did, Dad." It was incredibly sweet, and I've never forgotten that. Mark Twain was right. You can live off a nice compliment for a long time. My father was in a drunken rage and screaming at my sister and I. When the dust had settled, it was time for my little brother to go to bed. My self-confidence was beaten down, but I tried my best. I sang him to sleep back then, and he said to me, "You sound like an angel." Damn near cried. I wore a furry pants, satyr/fawn costume to a rain fair in the middle of the summer. Not this summer, obviously. Airflow in that costume was pretty good, but somewhere around high noon, I was just way too hot and sat down on a rock for a bit. Probably looking a bit worse for wear. A little kid walking by looked by me, looked me up and down, and encouragingly said, "It'll be okay, goat." And she kept walking. Super cute. I worked at a middle school in my late 20s, and I was really stressed about getting older. A student very earnestly walked up to me and asked if I was a teacher or a student. I hadn't been a middle school student in 15 years, so it was a little ridiculous, but it made my whole week. When I was in the 8th grade, we had a little buddy in kindergarten where we accompanied them to church. It was a Catholic school, and also did activities with them. I got this little blonde-haired kid with glasses named Jesse, and he was quite the handful. Didn't really seem to get along with the other kids and was always acting out. At first, he was tough to try to keep in line, especially at church, but after a while, he seemed to take a real liking to me and started listening. We started getting along great and had a lot of fun drawing and coloring together. One day, I got to meet his mom before school started. She handed me a present. It was the latest Harry Potter book, and thanked me for being such a great buddy to Jesse. Apparently, his dad left them, and he took it really hard, which is why he was always acting out. She said that she noticed a change, and thinks that me being so nice to him had a lot to do with it, because he would talk about me to her. Although the gift was coming from his mom and not him, to hear that it had such a positive impact on a little kid like that was such a fulfilling feeling. I was watching TV and my nephew, 4 years old, was playing with his toys. He was so into it, and out of nowhere, he went, "Hey uncle, I love you," and went straight back to playing with his toys. It's not a crazy story, but man, I teared up a little bit. I was teaching 4 to 5-year-olds one year, and I don't particularly like kids, but this one day, I was having a bad time in my personal life, and one of my students comes up to me, hugs me, and says, "I love you, miss," and just walks back to the playground. Kids are wonderfully intuitive. My kid is 18 months, so not really talking yet, but every night when we tuck him in, I say, "Good night, I love you," and then blow him a kiss, mwah, and pat his head. Last night, as I was walking out the door, I heard a little voice say, "Mwah," in the dark. I was teaching a kindergartner and doing silent E spelling words. I gave him the word cute, and he replied, "Oh, so I should just write your name down here?" I lost my shit and told his dad, who laughed so hard. That kid still has a crush on me to this day. You know those videos of dogs being surprised by soldiers coming home for the first time in a year or so and being so excited? I surprised my 6-year-old brother when I came home from college last winter, and he couldn't stop giggling about how he missed me, and I was so happy. I'm disabled. I use different types of equipment. As I'm at a shoe store with my dad at checkout, there's a kid behind me with his mom. I overhear him asking about me and his mom shushing him. I turn around because I'm more than happy to talk to him, rather than perpetuate stigma. So after a talk with his mom to make sure she's cool with it, I talk to the kid. He says I look like a giraffe, which I could see, as I was in crutches, kinda giving the look of 4 legs. Though I wish I had the height of a giraffe, I definitely do not. This might be strange, but at the time, it meant a great deal to me. I am a big white guy from Hong Kong. Then my family moved to Pattaya in Thailand, which is the sex tourist capital of the world. It is a world apart. Seriously, Google it. You will not believe it. I like people and you want to be nice, but in Pattaya, you are consistently getting grabbed by hookers. The people you know have serious drug problems. So do their parents. Loads of extremely violent fights. It is proper rough. I was just trying to finish school, but I got a lot of shit. So I shaved my head, got a few piercings, and only wore wife beaters, and worked out a bunch to protect myself. When I went back to Hong Kong, my mates hardly recognized me. Eventually, I get to go to university in the UK and wait for a connecting flight in Dubai. I think I look tough as hell. Piercings, b-ball shorts, slap head, white vest. I'm walking about, and this little girl holding her grandmother, who is veiled up and who is obviously a strict Muslim, sees me and runs up in perfect English, asking if I knew where the toilet was. The grandmother looked horrified, cause I looked like such a white fascist. Thankfully, I was able to help, and it made me realize that despite all my experience, I am not a monster, and I hope she was able to see the kindness on my face. I could leave that hell behind. My youngest brother and I are 18 years apart. One time, when he was probably 6 or 7, he gave me a note he wrote that said, "I really, really love you, but not as much as you think." He totally meant more than I think, but it was so sweet and cute. That was 10 years ago. I have tucked it away someplace special. My son caught me crying once, just from stress of general life, and he put his little hands on my face and said, "It's okay, mommy. I love you so big." And he wiped my cheeks. It's stupidly generic, but honestly, that boy is the greatest gift my otherwise awful life has given me, not counting his father. A little girl was riding her bike on the sidewalk. As she came closer to me, she veered onto the grass and fell down. I ran over to her and picked her up and checked to see if she was okay. She was, and rode off. A couple of minutes later, I passed her house. She was standing outside with her dad and said, pointing at me, "That man helped me." I was a skinny 14-year-old kid, but I was a man that day. I'm a woman who presents masculine dude clothes and very short hair. I get harassed in public bathrooms all the time. Dirty looks to people calling me a pervert and threatening to call security if I didn't leave. So one day, I'm in the bathroom at Target. It was thankfully empty until I came out of the stall to wash my hands. This little girl walks in and just stares at me like I've grown a second head. I curtly ask, "Can I help you?" And she says back, "I really like your hair," then smiles and goes into a stall. I left with tears in my eyes. A neighborhood girl who always runs out to say hi when I'm running by myself or with my dogs was playing with a few friends. I had 2 pups with me, and when I approached, the one girl was unsure of the pups. I had them sit and wait to be approached. The little girl seemed more comfortable. She pet them and was so happy and said, "You're a really good doggy daddy. If I was a doggy, I'd want you to be my daddy." It was just so cute, so sincere, and it's been a really rough week. And to hear that someone thinks I'm a really good dad to my dogs was a boost I needed to get out of negative thinking to do with my ex-girlfriend, my inability to have kids of my own, and recent drama around a breakup. Dogs are wonderful. Was complaining to my 5-year-old niece how no man likes me and just being a downer. She looked me in the eye and said, "Well, I like you and I think you're pretty." "Why, thank you," as I sobbed a little. She's inheriting all of my stuff. So my husband and I split night kid duty around 3 a.m. I'm before 3 a.m. He's after. Well, this particular day my husband was beat when my 3-year-old woke up at 4 a.m. But he did get up to set up in the living room. He turned on a tank documentary, sat on the couch, and suddenly it was later. Husband woke up on the couch, under a blanket, holding a stuffed Pikachu, Pokemon on the TV, and a toddler patting his arm, saying, There, dada." Toddler had mistaken his dad waking up as his dad having a nightmare and was trying to soothe him. 20 years ago, my little brother came home with a giant paper heart with pink glitter on it that has an adult's handwriting, "Love nearby." and then brother's name written underneath. He gave it to me and apologized that he didn't learn how to spell love nearby at school yet and had only just learned to write his name. But he wanted me to know that if I ever felt sad or lonely, I shouldn't worry because there's always love nearby. When I was 23, I was engaged to my husband. He called me at work one day and said that we had to cancel our wedding because the Air Force revoked his leave. I was also a volleyball coach at the time, so after work, I went straight to practice. In high school, college, I always used volleyball as a place where I could get temporary reprieve from any shit in my life. I informed my girls that I just wanted to scrimmage with them for today's practice. They asked why, then the veil came down and I burst into tears and told them that the Air Force canceled my wedding. Within a second, I had a bunch of 13-year-old girls hugging their sobbing coach and telling me it was okay. The group hug is probably one of the most important seconds in my life. I was sure I was going to catch hell for this from the parents, but to make that moment even more important, a bunch of them came up to me at the next tournament and told me they were really sorry about what happened. They also told me they were so glad that I had that meltdown in front of their girls because I was such a tough girl, and they thought their girls were so blessed to see an adult they respected so much get knocked down by life and be raw and vulnerable, and then get back up and keep going. I volunteer with kids from ages 9 to 12 at local universities, teaching them about different career paths they can take. It's called Career Trek, if anyone is curious. I recently came out as FTM, pre-COVID, and all of the kids addressed me with my preferred name and pronouns, and I almost cried. Quite possibly the one thing that I still think about to this day. I love those kids. My sister is 7 and is extremely sassy. She's sometimes borderline rude, so her sweet comments always melt my heart. My favorite was last week. I was talking to my mom about how my naturally curly hair was balled up and made it look really short. She gently touched it and said, "I think you look really pretty." It was so sweet. I love her a lot. Probably a little late to the game for anyone to see this, but here we go anyway. My wife and I are pretty new in the foster parenting game. We had our first foster kid with us last summer. When she first came to our house, she told us her favorite foods were mustard and salt. As we got to know her, we got the impression that she mostly ate fast food and junk food in packaging. She was only 3, so she didn't know much else. Anyways, on one of the first days at our house, I made her a BLT for dinner, and she told me it was the best cooker in the whole world. That shit felt good. I was dating this guy around 2 or 3 years ago, and I invited him to a Memorial Day family cookout at my dad's house. As he's getting to know my relatives, my niece, who is maybe 5 or 6 at the time, comes up to me and says, "My name? You have a nice boyfriend." Substitute teaching in a kindergarten class. One of the boys said I looked pretty and made me a paper airplane with hearts on it. Another day, a 3rd grader pretended to pass out when he saw my cursive handwriting. A high school student said, "Thank God," when he saw that I was teaching math. I love those kids. My 2-year-old son. "I love you." Me. "I love you too." Son. "No, I love you." Me. "Both can be true." "You love me, and I love you." Son. "Both can be true?" Me. "Yes, baby, both can be true." Son. "Yay, both can be true. You love me, and I love you." And then he cuddled up next to me. Stepdaughter, 8 at the time, before her dad and I were engaged, referred to me as her stepmom. I told her that I love her and her dad, but I wasn't her stepmom. She just said, "Yeah, but you're gonna be," and smiled, and went back to coloring. He didn't say anything, but one time I was at Walgreens buying cover-up for an awful cyst on my face. I wasn't having a good day. I turn around, and right there, waist length, is a little boy holding up a single flower for me. It looked like it had been picked from somewhere. I stuttered out a thank you because I'm just surprised and looked around for his adult but didn't see one. He ran off down the aisle, and that was that. My heart was actually swelling from this little encounter. I put the flower behind my ear on the walk home. I was working in a restaurant as a server on that particular night. Had a headband with a bow on it in my hair, shortish and dark. A little girl at one of my tables said, "Hi, Snow White," when I went to greet them. It was so precious and really made my night. Last summer, my niece said my hair looked so pretty. Also, many years ago, I was working at Walmart, having a typical crappy day. A woman and her daughter went through my line, and she said, "My daughter picked this line because she thought you were the cutest." I work overnights as a 911 dispatcher. I was walking out of our front door after telling everyone goodnight and giving kisses. We have a 17-year-old, 13-year-old, and 4-year-old. My 4-year-old ran up to the door and said, "Wait, Mom, you forgot something. Don't leave. Wait right there." So I waited about 10 seconds and yelled, "I have to go, buddy. I'm going to make my coworkers late if I don't leave now." He ran up to me with a packet of ramen and said, "I got you a snack in case you get hungry." I told my coworkers when I got to work, and they all agreed they would stay over late for me to wait on my snack. 2 instances come to mind. First one, I took the day off work and had a daddy-daughter date ice skating. After, I asked her what her favorite part was, and she responded, "Seeing how proud you were when I skated without the skate helper." I asked how she knew, since she had been wearing masks, and she told me, "I could see it in your eyes." Then, the other day, she ran up and gave me a big hug and said, "You are the best dad." Then she released her grip and started walking away while announcing, "And I just farted, so enjoy that." When we were waiting for takeout at this hole-in-the-wall Chinese joint, it was a family place. Mom ran the front and helped Dad in the back. Son waited tables. He was probably about 8 the first visit, and little sister was there entertaining herself. The first time we went there, she must have been around 2. The last time, probably around 4. The last visit, she was very talkative and kept striking up a conversation with me. It started with her love for trolls and turned to her coloring. I started telling her about mixing colors, explaining how you always start with the lightest colors, etc. She was very hesitant and asked me to show her, so I showed her how to blend yellow and blue into green. Her eyes got huge and with the most amazed voice whispered, "You know magic?"